He is the creator and sustainer of all the worlds, whether those worlds are known or unknown to mankind.
Here we go.
Hello.
Here with Miss Moody and Mr. Gardam.
What's up?
Hello.
And Miss Willmott, just myself. That wasn't obvious. Wanting to talk about intersectionality in Of Mice and Men. Intersectionality being, if anyone wants to jump in with a definition.
Kind of the intersecting barriers that will prevent someone from achieving what they want to, I guess. That's probably not a great definition.
Actually, I have my slides up for this very thing. So
Put that down. No cheating.
The definition that I was giving my boys was that intersectionality is how different forms of discrimination overlap and affect an individual's experience.
That's much more sophisticated, Mr. Gardam.
But we see this a lot in Of Mice and Men, and I noticed with the cats and with the practice cats that a lot of my boys were really trying to grapple with intersectionality to varying degrees of success, because it is like a really complex thing. I think if you're at the point where you are thinking about talking about intersectionality in your essay, you were really dealing with some high level stuff.
But that's what we're aiming for.
Well, exactly. So
and if we're talking about Steinbeck in general, where he, we talked about this the other day with, old-timey authors talking about disability and race and gender at that time, pretty, you can see why he was labelled a big, dirty communist.
Because it wasn't being done.
No, he wasn't really approved of. But I suppose I've lost my train of thought.
All right.
There you go.
I think maybe we can provide some examples of intersectionality in action in Of Mice and Men, because I think the key thing for people to understand is, and I was reading this quite a bit, it's not that people are being discriminated by intersectionality.
Yeah.
So it's not their intersectionality that is discriminating against them. It is that they exist at the intersection of various different forces in society that are affecting them in different ways.
Which disadvantage them further from other people who don't have those intersecting disadvantages.
And especially at that time of history when people had just lower compassion in general, because if we're stuck in a survival situation, everyone's, unemployed, underfed, post-World War One, the world is generally a challenging and miserable place, but
Fend
probably...
for yourself.
Yeah, so I guess the more disadvantages you have in society, the less likely you are to succeed in a place that's already very tough, very dog-eat-dog, everyone for themselves.
I think one of the clearest examples from the book, at least from like an essay writing standpoint, because there's lots to talk about, is Crooks.
Yeah.
Because he is both an African-American and he is disabled. And we have a good contrast to him in Lenny, who is also a person with a disability, but does not experience the sort of racial discrimination that Crooks would. And that is where we see how intersectionality existing in the intersection of different forms of discrimination can impact you in different ways to other people who have similar but different experiences.
And that's when we're talking about kind of our hierarchy or where we were placing people like on the power scale, which is what we did in my class.
Oh, can we do that now?
Yeah. So who would we probably put at the top?
The boss.
Because
The boss.
he doesn't have any intersecting barriers because he is white, he is wealthy, he's at the top of the food chain, if you like. Then
you could even probably put Curly up there as well,
Yeah.
purely because he's got, in addition to that, he's got physical prowess, which the boss, we don't... Are you kidding me?
Is that a fire drill?
That's a fire drill.
Hot
takes!
3 hours later.
Hi, we're back.
And we're back.
Fire drill. That was really fun.
The takes were too hot.
Hottest takes.
So, power rankings.
Power ranking.
Far out. Sorry, everyone. That's my alarm to get my printing.
Okay, the worst takes.
We're just people like you guys,
That's
which is
it.
nice.
But better.
So we had the boss, and we were talking about Curly being right up there as well.
Yeah, I thought maybe he would
boss's
be
son.
equal to the boss purely because later on we see the play of age as it relates to Candy and his employability, in addition to the fact that he's also disabled. So if we're also including... I'm getting the can. So if we're going to include age as a factor, which intersectionality, we have to, then I'd sort of almost put Curly at the top because he has more physical capability
than the boss.
Who is going to be older, and we have highlighted for us the fact that Curly is physically strong. He's
and
a
will
boxer.
take over the ranch.
So he's got youth on his side, money, etc. The only thing he doesn't have on his side is his wife.
And that's the tea.
I
would probably put Slim next, even though I guess people could argue that Curly's wife, financially, but because she's a woman, she's definitely lower.
I actually think Slim might sit somewhere between Curly and the boss, because
Really?
everything we hear about Slim is he's the god of the ranch, and what he says goes. I don't think... Oh, the prince. Yeah, but they describe him as godlike. Yeah. He does not have to listen to Curly. If anything, it's the other way around. I think when it comes to what's happening on the ranch, when it comes to the work, his word is law.
Would you say his intersecting barrier would be lack of education? Or
I think it would be...
financially, because he's the work that he's doing.
That's where I'm sitting, just because he doesn't have the means of production. If any moment Curly said to him, get off the ranch, you're fired, he could. And he doesn't have anything behind him. So, and I love that we disagree about this, because this is what I want the kids to do in their essays, is I want to go, right, this is the most powerful person because they have the fewest intersecting barriers. I would say Curly has got fewer than Slim purely because even though he is less respectable and he's got this weird Vaseline thing going on, he's probably less disadvantaged in society than Slim. Slim is absolutely up there. Yeah. Slim's up there. Right. Yeah. He's skilled, he's white, he's a man, he's got no obvious disabilities.
Confident and a leader.
Yeah. So that puts him
but
at the top.
He's
somewhere.
poor.
But he's poor. That's it.
And if he was wealthy, he wouldn't be doing this work. I think is the underlying fact.
But also, isn't it interesting that Steinbeck sort of valorizes him? That, of everyone, he portrays Lenny, George, Slim as the good guys. Candy as well. So he's really got a dog in this fight for the disadvantaged people. And the further down this chain we go, and we will keep going, the opinion of them becomes more positive, with the exception of Carlson. And he's an interesting figure, and we'll get to him in a second.
I feel nothing towards Carlson.
I have got open hatred to Carlson.
I've got no time for Carlson.
I have a note in the margins of my copy of the book that just says Carlson sucks.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe he doesn't necessarily have any difference in his intersecting capabilities to Slim, but I suppose Steinbeck's making the difference there, being a person of good character. So in terms of discrimination, he probably actually doesn't exist in any other order than Slim. Like, technically, he's got no other disadvantages. But I think Steinbeck's using those two as sort of two sides of a coin. That you've got the same person, essentially, but with different values. And you can see who we're supposed to be attracted to, and that's obviously Slim. And the people that we all think Carlson sucks about because he's kind of a jerk to everyone around him. So I think that's more of a moral lesson and less about intersectionality. But that's just my perspective.
But we have to place him somewhere.
Yeah.
So he can just go in the middle. Yeah.
Well, I'd say he's with Slim.
Yeah, all right. He can be paired with Slim.
Yeah, if we're talking about, like, social disadvantage, he doesn't have any more or less disadvantage than Slim.
Yeah. He's just unlikable.
George has to be somewhere just below that, I would think.
Yeah, because he's small.
He's small,
but he's clearly uneducated.
Yeah. But he is capable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but he does not have, I guess, that sort of social cachet or respect that a Slim would have.
He's still white, he's still a man, he still doesn't have a disability. He's, in terms of age, he's still got the benefit of youth, but it is heightened in the book, or emphasised when you first meet him. The first thing about him is that he's small. He's quick, he's smart, but he's small. And in a society that values physical strength because of labour demands, he's going to be lower than someone like Slim, who is strong.
Yeah.
And yet Curly also has this same sort of disadvantage. Is Curly described as small? Or do I just always picture him as small?
He's got short man syndrome.
Yeah.
He's small, but he's strong.
Yeah,
he's like, it's emphasised that he's this boxing
and he's aggressive.
Something or other. And he's aggressive. So
which is valued.
He's handy.
Makes him a tool, but that's okay.
So George, who... Now, this is where it gets Well, it's up for more debate, but
It's-
I would put
yeah.
Curly's white. It's hard
See,
because
she's
it's like
white.
she's
In terms of age, she's
she's young. She is married to the heir to the ranch, if you like.
so she's
But-
financially
Yeah, but being a woman during this time, if she didn't have Curly, she would be right at the bottom as well.
Yep.
That's so true. And we see women who are right at the bottom, and that would be your Claras,
Yeah.
your prostitutes, and your.
Aunts.
Although I guess the aunt is also probably further up than Curly's wife, because I think with women, or age is almost a benefit where it's not to men. Like youth naivety sort of almost puts you down in society as a woman.
I've been trying to explain to the boys that at the time as well that if you, because there were many questions about why did she marry him then? Why would you be with someone that you don't want to, that you don't love or you hate? And as at the time as a woman, if you weren't married, you were a spinster.
You don't
or
have
you
a
were,
bank account.
No, you don't have a bank account. You can't walk down the street, but you would be shunned by society if you weren't married. So that was really the only option.
Well, that's
for women.
right. And funny thing about spinster as well, spinster is like this derogatory term
Yeah.
for an older woman who was never married, and it's got really negative connotations. But what it really comes from is the fact that a spinster was someone who was potentially able to fend for themselves in a capitalist, patriarchal world that didn't value women independently of their man. So
there must be something wrong with
literally,
them.
spinster comes from able to spin, as in like cotton, thread, wool, whatever it is. They are able to produce enough to survive themselves. So even though it's a derogatory term, what it actually indicates is women's independence from men, which at the time was not valued.
Yeah. So I forgot what I was talking about.
Where does she sit?
Well, it's
Below
She has
Lenny.
clear power over crooks, threatening to
Yep.
strung you up by a tree or
string you up.
string you
Yeah,
up.
lynch him. Yeah.
And
in that way, like, that is her using, I guess, that one very clear piece of privilege that she does have in this society, that of being a white woman.
And
And
I
Lenny does that as well. Oh, no, not Lenny. Sorry. Crooks does that as well to Lenny. Being
Yes.
more cognitively functioning. He also says, oh, imagine what if George never comes back to you? It's all about that power play. So,
that's true.
yeah. So
We must look at the people below. Like, could she kick either of those men off the ranch if she said so to
Well,
Curly?
she could accuse any of them of sexual assault. I think that's what her point is. But in terms of
Yeah.
her social power going out into the world,
Oh, yeah.
Lenny and George can own their own bank account, can own property. If they want to go and pay for it, they can.
Yeah.
Women do not have that right. So I'm actually, if it was me, I'm going to put her only slightly above Crooks. I'm
Yeah.
going to put Lenny and George above because they both have employment. They're both men. They're both white. Obviously, Lenny's below George because his cognitive ability is not as strong. Candy below him because he also has a disability, but unfortunately this one affects his work, so he's less valuable. And he's also got the intersection of age at play there.
Yeah. Age, disability, and economics.
Yeah. And then under that, Curly's wife. Under that, Crooks.
Love it.
Yeah.
If we were to write an essay trying to bring intersectionality into our analysis, like, just off the top of your heads, what would some approaches be that you could think of that could be an effective way to talk about intersectionality?
I'm going to say women. There is always going to be the question of gender and power. So that's always going to be the subtext of any question about of mice and men. Always about who has power, who doesn't, and that works with capitalism, that works with gender, that works with friendships even. All of those things have that power dynamic that is determined by their intersectionality, by the intersecting factors of their lives that make them who they are. So in any case, in talking about any topic, there should be some mention of Steinbeck's construction in creating characters with intersecting levels of disadvantage that mean that sort of predetermine their place in society. So when talking about friendships, you have to talk about why Lenny and George look after each other. And it's because they make up for each other's quote-unquote flaws in a society that would see them as flawed at the time. I think you have to approach it as saying not just, yes, Crooks is a black man, therefore has a level of disadvantage in society. You've got to say that Steinbeck, is absolutely, he's using Crooks as a symbol of all black men in society, and using Lenny as a symbol of all cognitively impaired people in society, and Curly's wife as women, whatever. And he's doing that to send a message about what he thinks the world values, and he's openly criticizing it. And I think if you're not mentioning the fact that Steinbeck's world is informed by, or the world of the text is informed by Steinbeck's experience of life during the Great Depression, at a time where people were, and obviously remain, but specifically during the Great Depression, are specifically disadvantaged by a multitude of things. I think if you're not mentioning that in an essay, at some point, you've missed the point of the text.
I just want to point out as well, what Miss Willmott has just said is really what makes up a really top-level sort of A+ response. She's mentioned authorial intent, she's mentioned wider context, she has mentioned elements of construction, and she has mentioned themes from the text. And if you want to tackle something like intersectionality and really go for a high-level response in the exam, you need to be considering all of these things in your response. And it doesn't mean that you take them one at a time and you say, I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk about this. You need to have a way that you can fluidly bring that into your discussion.
And explain how all of it interacts to create the piece.
Yeah.
Because nothing's done in isolation. Crickets.
What a masterclass. Sorry, I'm just sitting here and taking it all in.
I think I've been really, really pleased seeing the number of students attempting to talk about intersectionality. And I think it's something everyone should strive to talk about, because it is something, if you're talking about disadvantage, if you are talking about power dynamics, you can't really talk about those things without talking about the way that different experiences intersect and influence the identities and the experiences of these characters. So,
and keeping in mind as well, this is all coming from the position of a white educated man with the means to be a writer during the Great Depression.
I thought you were talking about me for a second.
Oh yeah. Don't listen to anything Mr. Gardam has to say. He is so privileged.
But heading into exam week, especially with intersectionality, do this for everything, right? But practice writing it and get feedback, because chances are you're not going to get it right on the first try. No one does. Intersectionality is a thing that even I am still educating myself on and learning about, and it takes a long time. So get the practice in now, so that when you come to the exam, you'll be in a better spot to dive into those sorts of conversations.
And always come and find Miss Moody, Mr. Gardam, or myself for a chat anytime you want to know more about intersectionality.
Hot take!
Hot takes!
Woo!